I was on the threshold of great things, he pleaded in a voice of longing, with a wistfulness of tone that made my blood run cold. And now for this stupid scoundrel. Your success in Europe is assured in any case, I affirmed steadily. I did not want to have the throttling of him, you understand, and indeed it would have been very little use for any practical purpose. I tried to break the spell, the heavy, mute spell of the wilderness that seemed to draw him to its pitiless breast by the awakening of forgotten and brutal instincts, by the memory of gratified and monstrous passions. This alone, I was convinced, had driven him out to the edge of the forest, to the bush towards the gleam of fires, the throb of drums, the drone of weird incantations. This alone had beguiled his unlawful soul beyond the bounds of permitted aspirations. And don't you see, the terror of the position was not in being knocked on the head, though I had a very lively sense of that danger too, but in this that I had to deal with a being to whom I could not appeal in the name of anything high or low. I had, even like the niggers, to invoke him himself, his own exalted and incredible degradation. There was nothing either above or below him, and I knew it. He had kicked himself loose of the earth, confound the man. He had kicked the very earth to pieces. He was alone, and I before him did not know whether I stood on the ground or floated in the air. I have been telling you what we said, repeating the phrases we pronounced, but what's the good? They were common everyday words, the familiar vague sounds exchanged on every waking day of life, but what of that? They had behind him, to my mind, the terrific suggestiveness of words heard in dreams, of phrases spoken in nightmares. Soul. If anybody had ever struggled with a soul, I am the man. If anybody had ever struggled with a soul, I am the man. And I wasn't arguing with a lunatic either. Believe me or not, his intelligence was perfectly clear, concentrated, it is true, upon himself with horrible intensity, yet clear, and therein was my only chance. Barring, of course, the killing him there and then, which wasn't so good on account of unavoidable noise. But his soul was mad. Being alone in the wilderness, it had looked within itself, and by heavens, I tell you, it had gone mad. I had, for my sins, I suppose, to go through the ordeal of looking into it myself. No eloquence could have been so withering to one's belief in mankind as his final burst of sincerity. He struggled with himself too. I saw it, I heard it. I saw the inconceivable mystery of a soul that knew no restraint, no faith, and no fear, yet struggling blindly with itself. I kept my head pretty well. But when I had met him at last stretched on the couch, I wiped my forehead while my legs shook under me, as though I had carried half a ton on my back down that hill. And yet I had only supported him, his bony arm clasped round my neck, and he was not much heavier than a child. And then there is the description of the crowd. There is that great brown river, I mean, if somebody has got language, Conrad has it. And this whole concept of cosmopolitanism, not just getting out of one state into the national capital, which in itself is a big fight in India. But, the sea is this man's house. The sea is this man's home, as he has said in the very beginning. As he said in the very beginning, I haven't been able to read those paragraphs aloud and record them, but I wanted to. I mean, it has been a transforming and enriching and a very rewarding experience to read this book, Heart of Darkness. And I am also going to share another paragraph which is about darkness. But I want to read something about that brown current here. Then there is a description of the crowd, the pilgrims. There are three men just loaded, just packed with mud and Shama like people who are performing some rites or something like that. And how they are also being attacked and how the crowd is cheering. There is like total confusion, lawlessness. It's what this protagonist, the not the narrator, but the narrator's protagonist who dies and whose death the novel ends with, says horror. If you read it in the analysis of greater, bigger things like imperialism, he's talking about not so much the profit part of it, although it plays a very big part, that this was my ivory, I collected it, and the company continues to look for it after his death so hard. And that is what protecting, he almost died. And there are so many layers, and it's an amazing novel. But coming back to the shama and the witchcraft and the hallucinations and all of it, but what I was talking about is the sense of horror. I would say he uses the word horror. To a layman it's an adventure, right? But it's more than that. Adventure could be had in a Disney. I don't like it either. It's so artificial, but still. At that point in time, it was actually horror. So, but I want to read the brown current, right? The brown current ran swiftly out of the heart of darkness, bearing us down towards the sea with twice the speed of our upward progress. And Kurtz's life was running swiftly too, ebbing out of his heart into the sea of inexorable time. The manager was very placid. He had no vital anxieties now. He took us both in with a comprehensive and satisfied glance. The affair had come off as well as could be wished. I saw the time approaching when I would be left alone of the party of unsound method. The pilgrims looked upon me with disfavor. I was, so to speak, numbered with the dead. It is strange how I accepted this unforeseen partnership, this choice of nightmares forced upon me in the tenebrous land invaded by these mean and greedy phantoms. Kurtz discoursed. A voice. It rang deep to the very last. It survived its strength to hide in the magnificent folds of eloquence the barren darkness of his heart. Oh, he struggled, he struggled. The wastes of his weary brain were haunted by shadowy images now, images of wealth and fame, revolving obsequiously round his unextinguishable gift of noble and lofty expression. My intended, my station, my career, my ideas, these were the subjects for the occasional utterances of elevated sentiments. The shade of the original Kurds frequented the bedside of the hollow sham, whose fate it was to be buried presently in the mold of primeval earth. But both the diabolic love and the unearthly hate of the mysteries it had penetrated fought for the possession of that soul, satiated with primitive emotions, avid of lying fame, of sham distinction, of all the appearances of success and power. Sometimes he was contemptibly childish. He desired to have kings meet him at railway stations on his return from some ghastly nowhere, where he intended to accomplish great things. You show them you have in you something that is really profitable, and then there will be no limits to the recognition of your ability, he would say. Of course, you must take care of the motives, right motives always. The long reaches that were like one and the same reach, monotonous bends that were exactly alike, slipped past the steamer with their multitude of secular trees, looking patiently after this grimy fragment of another world, the forerunner of change, of conquest, of trade, of massacres, of blessings. I looked ahead, piloting. Close the shutter, said Kurtz. Suddenly one day, I can't bear to look at this. I did so. There was a silence. Oh, but I will wring your heart yet, he cried at the invisible wilderness. We broke down as I had expected and had to lie up for repairs at the head of an island. This delay was the first thing that shook Kurtz's confidence. One morning, he gave me a packet of papers and a photograph, the lot tied together with a shoestring. I mean, it's just fantastic. And the way it ends, it made me cry. But I'm going to read you one more part before that.